Okay, Mickey. So Mickey is our speaker today, and Mickey is going to be giving a talk on the level 3 communication model. We had a talk years ago by your son Ash, right? On the level 3 communication model. It was really excellent. And so thank you so much to your family for bringing this wisdom to share with us. I hand over to you, okay?
Thank you. So today we're going to be talking about the level 3 communication model, which is a tool for handling challenging communications with other people. It's a linguistic mechanism, if you will, a linguistic template, and some underlying conceptual principles for handling challenging communications in a way that minimizes misunderstandings, enhances successful communication, and makes sure that both people are talking about the same thing when they're talking. But like many communication tools, it's not only valuable in communicating with other people. In fact, I generally find that communication tools are most valuable in checking my own thoughts and making sure that I know what I think I know and that I'm having the reaction I think I'm having. Our brains are extremely good at fooling us about what we're experiencing and how to think and talk about it. So before I talk about the level 3 communication model, which is a fairly complicated model, I'm actually going to talk about a simpler one that I think we're all fairly familiar with, which should make it easier to explain what I'm talking about. And that's what's called the 4-part apology. We're all familiar with the concept of an apology. Looks like this. I'm sorry. It's not very effective, especially if you make what's called a no-apology or a no-apology. Like, I'm sorry you were upset by the thing I said. I'm sorry you had such a strong emotional reaction to my communication. This is not actually an apology. In case anyone thinks that's an apology, it's not. So the 4-part apology is a template. It looks like this. I'm sorry action I took. It was wrong of me because reason it was wrong. In the future, I will specific action or strategy I will do differently. Will you forgive me? All 4 parts of that are really important because the apology, the 4-part apology, includes the specific thing or things you're apologizing for, which means the person you're apologizing to can tell whether you've apologized for the thing that upset them. It includes why it was wrong, which means you have to stop and think, well, why was it wrong? What harm did it do? What moral principle did it violate? Who did it hurt? It requires you to think of something you can do differently, because if you apologize for something, but you don't have a strategy for doing differently, you're just going to do the thing you did the next time and have to apologize again. And pretty soon people stop believing that apology. And the 4th part is, will you forgive me? And that's important because they get to say no. And that explicitly acknowledges you get to say no to this apology, to forgiving me. You get to say, no, I won't forgive you. And if that's not explicit, far too often apologies are treated as a tool to force people to forgive you. And especially with toxic memes like forgive and forget, where people somehow see a value in you not even remembering that they hurt you. Some people see a value in that. Generally, people want to hurt you again. The fact that apologies are treated as a compulsory now you must forgive makes them really dangerous. So that template can sound a little stilted. I'm sorry I'm sorry I called you a jackass. It was wrong of me because cruel words hurt. In the future, I will talk about my emotions instead of your characteristics that I imagine onto you. Will you forgive me? That's a really powerful tool. It's powerful because it actually, it's something you can teach. It started out as something you teach to children, but honestly, I think adults need it more than kids do. When I apologize to my kids for a parenting screw up, for something I do wrong in parenting them, I always make it a 4-part apology. Because I've learned better than just to say, I'm sorry. But the 4-part apology isn't just for the person that you're apologizing to. It's for you. When I laugh at my son, let's say, ha, you knew better, I say contemptuously with a sneer. Yes, I do that sometimes. I'm a parent and I make big parenting mistakes sometimes. If I say, sorry, I was in a bad mood, that's not actually an apology. That's putting the words I'm sorry in front of an excuse. But if I say, I'm sorry I sneered at you and claimed that you knew better, it was wrong of me because parental disapproval is hurtful and contempt is destructive to relationships. And also I didn't know you knew better. I have no idea what you knew or didn't know. And so I was making claims about you that weren't even true. In the future, I will believe you if you say you didn't know any better. And I won't sneer or roll my eyes. Instead, I will offer you a hug. Will you forgive me? Turns out it doesn't take many times of doing that before I start to go, you knew better, and go, oh my God, I'm doing that thing again. What am I supposed to do? That's right. I said I would offer a hug and believe he didn't know better. And suddenly I find myself saying, oh, wow, I'm sorry. It must feel awful to make a mistake like that. Do you want a hug, kiddo? I don't know if everyone here is aware of which one of those is more effective at changing children's behavior, not to mention maintaining strong and healthy emotional relationships with children, but it's the second one. By the way, I'm going to use a couple of examples from parenting my son. I asked his consent prior to this talk, and he gave it. So these are examples that this is a thing that he has pre-approved. A lot of parents treat their kids' experiences as something that belongs to them, and no, they belong to the kids. So that's the kind of tool I'm talking about when I talk about something like the Level 3 communications model. I'm talking about a pattern, a template, and an associated pattern of thought that not only enhances communication, but enhances my understanding of my own thinking patterns, my own role in the situation. The Level 3 communications model is based on the idea, by the way, it was invented by Richard Brody. I have some other problems with Richard Brody. He kind of got into the whole bell curve thing and got pretty toxic about it. But he wrote the book Virus of the Mind. He was fairly foundational in the field of memetics, and he came up with this communications model. And it's predicated on the idea that we do not have emotions in response to happenings in the external world. We have emotions in response to our thoughts about happenings in the external world. And this is important because if you happen to be living the unexamined life, as they say, you may not realize that you're having thoughts at all. Someone honks their horn at you, and you look up and see them barreling down the road at you, and you jump out of the way, and they just miss you. And you feel angry and scared, right? And you shake your fist, and you say, and then, because I mean, they just almost ran you off the road and they blared their horn at you. Of course you felt scared. And then you find out that their brakes had gone out. and they were trying desperately not to run you over and to find some way to stop their car before they did. And suddenly your feelings are gratitude and concern. Oh my God, are they okay? But the thing that happened is the same. The thing that happened is they blared their horn at you, and you looked up and saw the car and jumped out of the way, and the car zipped past you really fast. Those happenings are identical. The objective outside world happenings are the same. But the story I make up about them is different. And so my emotion is completely different. A lot of times we think that our emotional reaction is to something that someone else did, and we had to feel that way about it. But I remember when Ash was very young, he would be caught doing something wrong and he'd look down and smirk. And I'd get so mad. How dare he show that kind of contempt for my hurt feelings and upset about whatever he'd done wrong? How dare he show such dismissive lack of concern? I was so mad. How could I not be mad? He was smirking at me. And then I saw a poster designed to teach small children about emotions. And under embarrassment was a drawing of a kid looking down and smiling like that. Light bulb. Ash hadn't been making light of having hurt me. Ash hadn't been sneering. He had been experiencing embarrassment at being caught doing something wrong and showing that embarrassment like people do. Sorry. And all of a sudden my feelings changed. My feelings weren't, I'm so mad at my son. They were, oh God, I'm so ashamed of myself. How could I have been yelling at my son for years for being embarrassed? Totally different emotions, same external world, same objective happenings, different story about them, different emotion. This is especially important in communication because we really easily ascribe unfavorable stories, unfavorable motivations to other people. I know in the past we've talked about the fundamental attribution error. If I'm speeding, it's because I'm late for a job interview that's really crucial to my family's well-being, and I have to be on time, and I'm late because something happened at home and I couldn't get out the door in time, and I've got to speed. Of course I cut in line. But if someone else is speeding and cuts me off, it's because they are a selfish, mean jackass who's so entitled and thinks they own the road. What a dick. When I'm driving now and someone cuts me off, I say out loud, because it helps to say it out loud, I say, I really hope you get to the hospital in time for the birth. And I feel sympathetic and compassionate, and I slow down and give them space. From road rage levels of outrage to, oh, I'll back off and give them space. Because instead of making up the imaginary story, instead of telling myself the story, the fiction, the thing I made up in my head, that they are an entitled jackass who doesn't care about the rules of the road and thinks they're more important than everyone else, leading to the emotions of anger and outrage and vindictiveness, I tell a different story. They're trying to get to the hospital before their wife gives birth to their first child. Of course they're rushing. Of course they need to get in front of me. And of course I'll back up on them. What kind of a jerk would I be if I didn't? Different story. Different emotions, different actions. Now you can say, well, how do you know their wife is having a baby? Well, how do I know they're an entitled jackass? And this is at the root of level 3. The name comes from the fact that Richard Brody talks about 3 different levels of thinking. Level 1 is just reacting, unthinkingly reacting, doing whatever your impulses or instincts say. Level 2 is trying really hard to find the truth and then sticking to that truth once you find it. So if I know that they are a jackass, then I get to feel angry and vindictive and self-righteous. And if I know that their wife is having a baby, then I have to feel compassionate and caring and etc. Level 3 is where you realize that they are all just stories. There is no truth. There's a really important tool that my kids and my wife and I use when we are communicating. And it turns out that I'm sure I said, close the door, and my son is sure that I said, open the door. We call it the air in between. There is a monster, there's a demon in the air in between, and it loves to take a word and change it in flight. Now, we don't actually think there's a demon in the air. We don't actually think that anything actually happened to the sound waves. But it's a really handy, mnemonic trick for reminding ourselves that not only do I not know what my son said, and he doesn't know what I said, we only know what we heard, but I don't know what I said. My son doesn't know what he said. There have been times when I said something and the 5 other people listening assured me that I had actually said a different word than I thought I had. Of course, some of the time it turns out that I said something completely different in terms of specific words than I thought I said. And one of the words was a misheard, there have been times when a misheard phoneme completely changes the meaning of the sentence. And sometimes it's a Freudian slip. I meant to say close the door, I said open the door. And my brain filled it in with, of course I said close the door, I meant to say close the door. The reason we talk about the air in between is that it actually doesn't matter what I said or what I heard or what my son said or what my son heard. What matters is what I meant to say and what my son heard me say, or what my son meant to say and what I heard him say are different. Why? It's nobody's fault. It's not even, well, we should go keep a videotape on all the time, a video recorder on all the time so we know who's wrong. It doesn't matter. What matters is there was a miscommunication. Somewhere in the air in between, where the air in between actually includes my Freudian slips and stumbled syllables and their Freudian slips and stumbled syllables and assumptions and the fact that the human speech mechanism and listening mechanism are all this multi-level bouncing back and forth refinement process that has almost nothing to do with the sound waves. So we just say the air in between, and we go on having a useful conversation with the misunderstanding straightened out. We don't always use the level 3 communication model in our family. If we're talking, and someone spills hot soup on us, go, ow, ow, you spilled hot soup on me. Wow, I'm really sorry I spilled hot soup on you. That's enough. That works. There's no need to go, I'm sorry I spilled hot soup on you. It was wrong of me because I should have been watching where I was going. In the future, I will ask you to hold still while I walk past you if I'm carrying hot soup. Please. Screw that. That's not necessary when things are going well. But when someone pushes me while I'm doing something delicate and I turn around like, that's a really great time for me to go, I perceive that you pushed me. No, I perceive that you walked past me and suddenly there was a big push on my back. And I make up the story that you were making a joke by pushing me. And I feel angry. And I intend to ask you to not do that again and to apologize. And then the person who pushed me might say, I perceive that you backed up suddenly as I was walking past you and ran into me. And I make up the story that you didn't know I was there. And I feel offended and scared because you're blaming me for something that you did. And I intend to ask you to think about what you actually were doing at the moment that you ran into me. Because when communication starts to break down, it's really easy to just start assuming that my experience of something is the truth. I can't believe you would say that to me. I didn't say anything to you. Yes, you did. You said, right? Lots and lots of accusations flying back and forth. But instead, I perceive that you said tough shit when I told you that my boss yelled at me today, and I make up the story that you were making fun of me for being in trouble at work, and I feel sad and confused, and I intend to ask you to apologize. And the person responds, oh no, I said that's shit. Oh, I thought you said tough shit. Oh, okay, thanks. Communication. If I just said, I can't believe you said that to me, I'm so offended, maybe you think that I'm offended because you said the word shit. Maybe you think I'm offended because you interrupted me because you said it right in the middle of what I was saying. Maybe we never even find out that I heard tough shit and you said that's shit. But for me, the most important part of the level 3 communications model is not fixing a miscommunication or getting someone to respond a certain way to my emotional needs. The most important part of it is that it reminds me that the thing I'm reacting to emotionally isn't the thing that happened in the outside world. It's a story I made up about it in my head. I've actually innovated my own tool based on this, which is that when I find myself feeling an emotion that I don't want to be feeling, an emotion that does not serve my purposes, like fury at my child, there is actually never a time when I want to be feeling fury at my child. It's bad for me. It's bad for them. It is 100% unwarranted. A 12-year-old cannot do something to me that warrants fury. Sorry, technically that's not true. Functionally, it's true. Nothing my son will ever do warrants my fury. But I feel furious sometimes. Not at the thing my son did, but the story I made up about the thing my son did. So when I find myself feeling an emotion that does not serve me, I stop. And before I do actions based on that emotion, I challenge myself to make up 3 other stories about the same facts, not 3 stories that violate the facts. The facts, I perceived what I perceived. So I challenge myself, I make up the story that my son went into my room without permission when I accidentally left it unlocked and messed with my stuff, and I feel angry. So I'm going to challenge myself to make up 3 other stories that cause me to feel the other 3 primary emotions: mad, sad, glad, scared. They're like the big 4. There's also other ones like contempt, but the big 4 are mad, sad, glad, scared. And if I have a story about something that happened that makes me feel angry, I challenge myself to come up with 3 other stories consistent with what happened that make me feel sad, glad, and scared. So my son went into my room when I left the door unlocked and played with my stuff, and I feel angry. Because what happened is my son went into my room when the door was unlocked and played and messed with my stuff. That's what happened. The story is my son doesn't care about my privacy or my personal space. He knows it really upsets me when he goes into my room, and he did it anyway, and I feel angry. Well, what about a story that makes me feel happy? My son is so delighted by my collection of Star Wars toys, which I've collected since I was younger than he is now. He's so delighted by them that he wants to play with them enough that he will go into my room, even when I've told him not to play with them. And actually, he probably likes them that much, not because they're toys, but because they're my toys. And like most kids, he wants to be like his parents. And suddenly I'm feeling, aw, Oh, sweetie, ask next time, but come on, let's go play with the toys together. Same event, completely different emotional reaction. How about sad? You know, my son has trouble sometimes with impulse control. He's 12 and he has ADD. I was once 12 and I have ADD. I'm 49 and I have ADD and I still have problems with impulse control. So, you know, my son went into my room when the door was unlocked and messed with my stuff. And maybe he's still going to be doing that when he's 49. And that's not any fun at all. Maybe he's going to be having the same life I do, where he never learns impulse control. And I'm sad. I'm authentically sad at the thought of him having the struggles I've had. So what action do I take if that's the story I tell? I give him a big hug and I say, hey, impulse control is hard. I'm 49 and I still have trouble with impulse control. And I'm scared that if you don't learn impulse control now, you won't have it when you're my age. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about impulse control and about how to stop and think and go, I'm having trouble with this impulse control. What can we do about it? And maybe the action I take is I make sure my door is locked better. There was a time when my door lock, I have a lock on my door for privacy, personal space, and the lock has a switch that disables it. And there was a time in the past when my son unlocked that, flipped the unlock switch so that I assumed my door was locked, but he could go in later. And I started to get really mad, and then I thought, wait a minute, I can just fix it so he's not experiencing this temptation. I opened up the door lock, removed the switch that caused that behavior, put it off to the side and put the door back together. Now I couldn't set my door to be unlocked. I don't want to set my door to be unlocked. Problem solved, right? Because instead of being angry at my son doesn't care about my feelings, I was concerned, my son is having to deal with a temptation that he's not developmentally ready to deal with. And instead of being angry, I became his ally. How can I help him not have to deal with this? Now, I put the switch back because it's nice to be able to turn off the lock on my door because he doesn't come into my room. And he doesn't flip the switch even when he's in here watching a movie with me. So that's sad. Oh, how about scared? Well, my son came into my room and played with my stuff. And it's because I left it unlocked and I'm forgetful. I'm scared that I'll leave it unlocked again. Yeah, I'm really worried about that. Different story, different emotion. And the reason I do this isn't even to pick which of the 4 emotions I'll feel. The purpose of this exercise is to demonstrate to myself in the concrete situation that my emotion isn't because of what my son did. Now, it turns out that when I've done that exercise, I usually pick the one that makes me happy or the one that makes me sad but sympathetic and loving. But that's not, the goal is not make myself feel happy and loving toward my son. The goal is remind myself that how I'm feeling is not about my son's behavior. It's about the story I make up about my son's behavior. So the template for the level 3 communication model is I perceive objective thing. I make up the story, narrative about the objective thing. And because of that story, I feel emotion. And I intend course of action. 4 parts. I perceive objective thing. I make up the story, narrative about the thing. I feel emotion. I intend action. I perceive that you stepped on my toe for the 5th time today. I make up the story that you don't give a damn about my feet being in pain. I feel angry. I intend to shame you and blame you until you stop doing it. Okay, that didn't sound good. In my head, that didn't sound good. So instead, I perceive you stepped on my toe for the 5th time today. I make up the story that we need to change the seating arrangement so you're not walking past my toe while it's sticking out in the walkway. I feel relieved because my toe won't get stepped on anymore, and I intend to move my chair 90 degrees so my toes don't get stepped on. I like that. I like the way that sounds. You know? Or I might say, hey, you stepped on my toe again. And my son might say, I perceive that I stepped on your toe and that your toe was in the walkway. I make up the story that you keep sticking your feet in the walkway when I'm walking past carrying baskets of laundry. I feel frustrated and resentful because you're not being fair to me. Oh, sorry, that's part of the story. I make up the story that you're sticking your feet in the walkway because you don't care about me and you're trying to get me in trouble. I feel frustrated and resentful and scared. I intend to ask you to keep your feet out of the walkway. Oh, sorry, kiddo. 4-part apology. I am sorry that I kept putting my feet in the walkway. It was wrong of me because it set up a situation where you were likely to step on my toes or had to do a lot of careful attention to not step on my toes. In the future, I'll turn my chair 90 degrees so I'm not sticking my feet in the walkway. Will you forgive me? And pro tip for parents here, by the way, it's great to teach your kids 4-part apologies, but it's absolutely essential to give your kids 4-part apologies because kids learn by observation and modeling. And because parents have so much disproportionate power over their kids, that when we screw up as parents, we need to be really, really clear to our kids that we screwed up, that we know we screwed up, that we're sorry we screwed up, and that we're going to do things differently so we don't screw up that way in the future. And then they can relax, feel safe, and learn. So it's just another pitch for the 4-part apology. So there are a whole bunch of these tools. The level 3 communication model is just one of them. But it's a really valuable one because it helps me not get stuck in the stories I'm making up. And a lot of times it helps me check the story I have made up, or even my perception of what happened against the other person. If I say, you stepped on my toe while you were walking by, I perceive you stepped on my toe, and I make up the story and I feel sorry. And Miles says, I don't know if you perceived that I had just tripped and almost dropped the laundry, but I perceived that when I was walking past you, I lost my balance and started to fall and caught myself and stepped on your toe while I was catching myself. All of a sudden, I make up a different story. I can no longer make up the story, my son doesn't care about my toes. Now I have to make up the story, my son tripped and stumbled and landed on my toe by mistake and I yelled at him for it. Darn, time to apologize again. So every piece, just like the 4 pieces of the 4-part apology are each important, every piece of the level 3 communication model is important. I perceive, and then I make sure that I'm actually talking about things that are in the real world, the outside world, the objective world. Not I perceive that you yelled at me angrily. Angrily is actually a story I make up. I perceive that you yelled loudly at me. I make up the story that you were angry and being a jerk. I feel upset and sad and scared. I intend to ask for an apology. My son responds, I'm sorry I yelled at you. It was wrong of me because yelling is verbal violence and it's scary. In the future, when I'm too angry to talk quietly, I will ask you for a hug instead. Will you forgive me? Sure, kid, I forgive you. Or my son goes, I perceive that you laughed at me when I told you how I was feeling. No, I perceive that you laughed while I was talking about my feelings, and I make up the story that you were being contemptuous and dismissive, and I feel angry, and I intend to ask you to apologize to me first. it doesn't actually matter the specifics of the situation. It doesn't even matter whose story is right. Because again, level 3 is not about find the right story, find the true story. It's about remember, it's just a story. And tell a story that serves your purposes. My purposes with my son are to love him, to nurture him, to cherish him, to let him know how much I am delighted with him, and to help him grow into a person who is happy and fulfilled and whose life is full of love. That's my intent. If I'm telling a story that causes me to feel things like anger and contempt, and take actions like yelling and sneering, I am absolutely not serving that purpose. Even if, but it's true. Well, no, it's a story. It can't be true. It also can't be false. It's just a story. So if my son does something and I make up a story about it that makes me furious, I stop. What's a story I can make up about the same thing? Oh Lord, of course he yelled at me. He was up till midnight last night having fun watching TV with us. He's exhausted. Oh, poor sweetie. Now I feel loving and sympathetic. And I say, hey, Miles, I observed that you yelled at me, and I make up the story that it's because we kept you up way too late watching TV with us. And I feel sympathetic and apologetic. And I intend to ask if you want a hug, and maybe we should just sit and have some nice quiet time together and, see if that helps. Boom. Now we're not fighting anymore. Now Miles knows that I care about him, and he knows that I feel kind of bad about keeping him up really late, and that I understand why he yelled at me. It's because he's really tired. So yeah, level 3 communication model. I perceive objective thing. I make up a story, a narrative about it. Because of that story, I feel an emotion. I intend a course of action. There you go. Oh, and Miles, thank you for letting me use examples from our relationship. I really appreciate it, and you are fantastic and admirable, and I love you.
All right, Mickey, have we come to the end? Wasn't sure. All right, fantastic. All right, can we all please unmute our microphones and give Mickey a round of applause?